Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve ehlul ukdeden min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatühü. Inshallah, today we will make a new start. Just give me a second, please.
Okay, so inshallah, now that we finished 10th word, we are stepping back once more to the first word. So we are making a fresh beginning. So the first word is where the author starts it all. So inshallah, let's see what he says there. And I guess we'll need a reader for today. And since we have a voice we have not heard for quite some time, would you like to read us the first word?
Okay, which page is it?
First word is at the very beginning.
Oh, very beginning.
Very first. Yeah, that's one.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. And from him do we seek help. All praise be to God, the sustainer of all the worlds, and blessings and peace be upon our master Muhammad and on all his family and companions. Brother, you wanted a few words of advice from me, so listen to a few truths included in 8 short stories, which, since you are a soldier, are in the form of comparisons of a military nature. I consider my own soul to need advice more than anyone, and at one time I addressed my soul at some length with 8 words inspired by 8 verses of the Quran, from which I had benefited. Now I shall address my soul with these same words. Now I shall address my soul with these same words, but briefly and in the language of ordinary people. Whoever wishes may listen together with me. The first word, Bismillah, in the name of God, is the start of all things good. We too shall start with it. Know, O my soul, just as this blessed phrase is a mark of Islam, so too it is constantly recited by all beings through their tongues of disposition. If you want to know what an exhaustible strength, what an unending source of bounty is Bismillah, listen to the following story, which is in the form of a comparison. It goes like this. Someone who makes a journey through the deserts of Arabia has to travel in the name of a tribal chief and enter under his protection. For in this way he may be saved from the assaults of bandits and secure his needs. On his own, he will perish in the face of innumerable enemies and needs. And so 2 men went on such a journey and entered the desert. One of them was modest and humble, the other proud and conceited. The humble man traveled safely wherever he went. If he encountered bandits, he said, I am traveling in the name of such and such tribal leader. And they did not molest him. If he came to some tents, he was treated respectfully due to the name. But the proud man suffered indescribable calamities throughout his journey. He both trembled before everything and begged from everything. He was abased and became an object of scorn. My proud soul, you are the traveler, and this world is a desert. Your impotence and poverty have no limit, and your enemies and needs are endless. Since it is thus, take the name of the pre-eternal ruler and post-eternal Lord of the desert, and be saved from begging before the whole universe and trembling before every event. Yes, this phrase is a treasury so blessed that your infinite impotence and poverty bind you to an infinite power and mercy. It makes your impotence and poverty a most acceptable intercessor to the court of one all-powerful and compassionate. The person who acts saying in the name of God resembles someone who enrolls in the army. He acts in the name of the government. He has fear of no one. He speaks, performs every matter, and withstands everything in the name of the law and the name of the government. At the beginning, we said that all beings say in the name of God through the tongue of disposition. Is that so? Indeed, it is so. If you were to see that a single person had come and had driven all the inhabitants of a town to a place by force and compelled them to work, you would be certain that he had not acted in his own name and through his own power, but was a soldier acting in the name of the government and relying on the power of the king. In the same way, all things act in the name of Almighty God. For a minute, things like seeds and grains bear huge trees on their heads. They raise loads of mountains. That means all trees say, in the name of God, fill their hands from the treasury of mercy and offer them to us. All gardens say, in the name of God, and become cauldrons from the kitchens of divine power in which are cooked numerous varieties of different foods. All blessed animals like cows, camels, sheep, and goats say in the name of God and produce springs of milk from the abundance of mercy, offering us a most delicate and pure food like the water of life in the name of the provider. The roots and rootlets, soft as milk of plant, trees, grasses say in the name of God, and pierce and pass through the hard rock of earth. Mentioning the name of God, the name of the most merciful, everything becomes subjected to them. The roots spreading through hard rock and earth and producing fruits and easily as the branches spread through the air and produce fruits, and the delicate green leaves retaining their moisture for a month in the face of extreme heat, deal a slap in the mouth of the naturalists and jab a finger in their blind eyes, saying, even heat and hardness in which you most trust are under a command. For like the staff of Moses, each of those silken rootlets conform to the command of, and we said, O Moses, strike the rock with your staff, and split the rock, and the delicate leaves fine as cigarette paper beside the verse, O fire, be coolness and peace against the heat of the fire, each like the members of Abraham. Since all things say in the name of God and bearing God's bounties in God's name, give them to us, we too should say in the name of God. We should give in the name of God and take in the name of God. And we should not take from heedless people who neglect to give in God's name. Question: we give a price to people who are like tray bearers. So what price does God want? Who is the true owner? The answer: yes, the price the true bestower of bounties wants in return for those valuable bounties and goods in three things. One is remembrance, another is thanks, and the other is reflection. Saying in the name of God, at the start is remembrance, and all the praise to be to God, at the end is thanks. And perceiving and thinking of those bounties, which are priceless wonders of art, being miracles of power of the unique and eternally besought one, and gifts of his mercy is reflection. However, foolish it is to kiss the foot of a lowly man who conveys to you the precious gift of a king and not to recognize the gift's owner. It is 1,000 times more foolish to praise and love the apparent source of bounties and forget the true bestower of bounties. O my soul, if you do not wish to be foolish in that way, give in God's name, take in God's name, begin in God's name, and act in God's name, and that's the matter in a nutshell.
Jazakallah khair. So this is really the introduction to all the author's writings. But as he concludes at the end, this is the matter in a nutshell as well. Bismillah is the beginning of Quran. It is the beginning of chapters of Quran. So it's so central, and this part is about Bismillah. So, and we are again starting from Bismillah. Let us hear your comments. What do you think? Overall, any comments you would like to make about this topic? Anything that attracted your attention especially?
Oh, yes.
Because it's a apparently super simple metaphor. So the idea in here, I guess, is mainly what does it mean to say in the name of, because we say in the name of with the Ismi Allah. We don't say anything more than that. We just say in the name of. You don't say I start, I do this, I do that. It's just in the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate. What does this in the name of mean? And the author even makes a bold comment at the beginning saying that everything says Bismillah. Like, yeah, it's a sign of Islam. Muslims say Bismillah, or if anybody says Bismillah, you know that it's a Muslim person and whatnot. Let's take it as such. We can talk more about that. It says everything says Bismillah, not only humans, not only Muslims, everything says Bismillah. So what do you think? Any comments that you would like to share? Okay, no comments. I think was serving tea. So anything from that side?
So Assalamu alaikum. So I thought the one thing that was interesting to me was the metaphor that was used in like comparing someone who travels through the desert and in order to be protected from bandits has to travel sort of under the name of some sort of tribal chief. And I guess that was interesting to me because it's like saying Bismillah means like you're being protected by sort of like, you know, the most ultimate protector. And if we go back to the comparison, when you invoke someone's name to like say a bandit or whatever, it has to be the name of someone like so powerful that the bandits would have to take you at your word that this person, we have to assume that this person is like telling the truth, because the risk of like, I don't know, in like like getting on the wrong side of this very powerful person wouldn't be worth just robbing this one traveler. So I thought that was interesting because it's kind of like saying, you know, saying Bismillah means you're under the protection of someone, of a being that's like all powerful, and someone who had any knowledge of that wouldn't like dare to cross you. So that's what I just found that metaphor really interesting. Because it's like the opposite party has to kind of weigh the risks, if this is someone truly worth like robbing, like if the person is being protected by someone like this powerful.
Yes. So taking the name of a strong one and being treated by this name. So then I guess in our case, then since his claim is that if you act by somebody's name, then you can achieve things beyond your power. Then the question is, if I observe things that are doing or achieving things beyond their power, then they are not acting on their own. So I think this is like if you go to a tent, you just say somebody's name and you are being treated like a king. So they would say, well, this is just a stranger. Why is this person being treated so well? Or then you say, well, there must be somebody behind that person. This is why this person is being treated well. Otherwise, he's a stranger. Why would those people treat that person well? Or bandits, they're not touching this person, although this person is a weak person. Like, why? These guys are in need of money, and this person has money in his pocket, but as if they're afraid of this person that they're not touching him. So there must be someone behind that person. So then, yeah, the issue is, because the author is using this as a metaphor to say that everything says Bismillah, meaning everything acts in the name of the Creator. They don't act on their own behalf. So can we ask the question, what does it mean that things acting on their behalf? Does anybody claim that? Or what is the major claim? How does things act? How does sun act? How does rain act? How does a particle or an electron act? What is the idea? What do you think? How does it act?
I mean, the sun, it has the same general motion every day. I would assume it's not acting on its own accord because it doesn't really seem to possess the power of choice, right? So maybe it's following the course someone else laid out for it, I would think.
So is this part of the conversation at all? Like the idea being presented here? Things act on whose name? Like, for example, does our perspective that we learned from primary school or even today in the university, in whose name does an electron spin? Like, why is that this emphasis of in the name of God there? Because it might be that you're thinking something else, that this alternative is being presented. What is the alternative that Bismillah is correcting?
I think the alternative is that the electron is following some kind of law that was already set. And I think we talked about this before, but if we think about it, it doesn't have the will to do so. So at every moment it's, it's being driven to do so, let's say, by its creator. So that's how it is in the name of God.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't hear this perspective from Quran saying it spins in the name of its creator, what would we think? Or what is our alternative understanding? Is it even a matter of conversation, or it's not being mentioned, but there's an assumption? No?
There's an assumption. I think there's an assumption that things are just as they are, like matter and energy kind of exist on their own. And as was being mentioned before, there's certain rules like action, reaction, and there's basically just like a programming to things, and things are programmed and they just work according to that programming.
I mean, so the example that we're going off, right, is that, if we have members of a mafia, they're able to, I don't know, maybe do things that they wouldn't be able to do under their own individual capacity. So sometimes we can think of it as a question of capacity, or a question of authority, question of what kind of qualities are necessary for this result to be attained, right? In the case of mafia, might be power, wealth, intimidation. And so when we think about whether things act in the name of God or not, or what the alternative would be like acting not in the name of God, under themselves or under some other name, right? This might be, as what Sarah said, like maybe under the name of a natural law, but we have to investigate what that means. Or if it's under their own name, then, I drink water, very sort of maybe classic example, and that water is able to quench my thirst and fulfill a number of different functions that I may not even be aware of within my body. And so is it accomplishing all of these different functions or all of these different things in its own name, by itself? Do those qualities belong to the water? Like I was talking to someone else about this, like if I eat, whenever I eat some sort of fruit or vegetable, I like to sort of Google the benefits of it so that, it makes me feel like, oh, you're oiling your car, like oiling my body in one sense. I'm like, oh, like if I eat a cup of blueberries, it has antioxidants and it does this, it does that, right? So are those things under the authority of the blueberry? Do they belong to the blueberry itself, or are they being given under like the creator of that blueberry? Yeah, those are my comments.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. So, yes, the idea of this on behalf of somebody's name, and since he was making a comparison between like a person who takes the name of a ruler and the other person who is just going by himself in this desert. So, I mean, because the way I was thinking about this one, again, along the lines of what's being explained here, if somebody comes and says, well, you need to evacuate this building, and we are, let's say, 10 people here, even if it is like this mosque right there, let's say 200 people inside the mosque, and you see that you don't speak English, somebody comes, a single person, and just has some conversation, and you see that those 200 people leaves the building. So you would say that, well, probably this guy was either a police or like a firefighter or something, and speaking on behalf of an authority, because otherwise the single person's power is not enough to, like, it's in no way that those 200 people were scared of this single person's power or single person's authority. It doesn't match. So it must be that somebody is behind that single person. It's not that the single person drive them out. It is this authority that drive them out. So likewise, in the life, I see things, and author gave multiple examples. Like, what was the examples he gave?
The leaves rootlets.
He gave leaf rootlets. He started with a seeds and grains bear huge trees on their heads. Like when you see a seed, do you hear it saying Bismillah? This is the claim, because the author says a grain or a seed is carrying a tree above its head. Just a small seed makes it a tree, comes out of that. The author's way of reading this is, he is saying that this seed says Bismillah. What do you think? Do you see it there or no?
I mean, from what I understand, he's saying that, you know, because a tiny seed is capable of becoming a big tree, right? This tiny seed is not, you know, how do you recognize the power that comes out of it, of turning into a giant tree, right? There's like a mismatch of maybe physical quantity and size and function. It's not its own accord. It's through the power of something else, it is able to, you know, become more than itself.
We have biologists or biology-related people there. How does a seed become a tree?
Photosynthesis.
I think you have an explanation for that.
How about like the non-biology, putting myself, all we really know is like photosynthesis.
You don't, yeah, well, you need just photosynthesis for that. And how it becomes a seed? Well, it germinates, makes leaves, and then starts
So
germinate, like the embryo comes out of the seed, so that's germination.
Okay.
And it establishes a root in the ground, and it starts growing in
It absorbs
certain.
nutrients from the ground.
Yes, it does. And then
Are you being sarcastic or just showing off your knowledge?
I'm guessing.
it makes, yeah, true. I mean,
so
it makes in branches and leaves, and
where is Bismillah there? Like, how does a seed say Bismillah? Like, he was just maybe an illiterate person of biology. He saw it, but let's see, how do you say it?
But you assuming that she agrees with the author. So everything says Bismillah, it's the author's.
Yeah, this is author's claim. I am asking if she sees it there or whether it is there. Atik saw it, but I don't know if she can see it.
I mean, it depends what the author means by everything says Bismillah. If we think about it from like the literal sense that the seed is speaking and saying Bismillah,
The author says
I don't think
everything
In the with the tongue of disposition. He says,
everything constantly recites Bismillah in the tongue of their disposition.
what is it? Lisan what?
Hal.
Like their hal.
So you see, for instance, a picture of
poor person.
a poor person or a child from, you know, these stereotypical child pictures from Africa, starving and so on. By just looking at it, you say that he's hungry, he's asking for food.
Oh,
This is his tongue of disposition.
I see.
By his being, he tells you, give me food.
Okay.
So how does a seed, by the tongue of its disposition, says Bismillah, or does it?
Who has the microphone, by the way? No, I'm not going to. Oh, okay.
It's here. I don't know why, but so if the tongue of disposition, basically it means that the way I'm looking at, so like the way it appears to me, right? So if I see that this seed can give a giant tree, so, and if I know that the seed by itself is not able to do that, so is that like a...
Now, he even said grain, so it does not necessarily need to be a giant tree.
Yeah, of course.
So it's not about only size. But yeah, Mr. Bida, what do you think?
I mean, I would say it's saying Bismillah by even just being there. but every aspect of its existence, not just its growth, not just the different stages of its life, even the very fact that it's there and it's persisting to be there. Every like morsel of its existence is the expression of Bismillah.
By just being there.
Yes, by the fact that it's even there. Whether or not it even agrees to that, if it had a consciousness.
Why? Can you elaborate a little more?
I think we had talked about this idea before about, and I think it actually was mentioned here too. This splitting of the rock was an example that I remember that we had mentioned once before that kind of stuck with me. Of like, it's not that the water was made to come from the rock at that moment, like that kind of nature wasn't changed within the rock to allow that water to spring forth. It was as if every moment it's being recreated, so it was created in this other way. It's like it has no essence that it has to perform a certain action or be in a certain to have a certain type of an existence. It is being created in every moment. So whatever Allah has deemed for its existence to be, that is part of I don't know, that's part of its being. It's not that it has its own like essence beyond that.
What is our evidence to that? Like if we put our identity aside, you're just observing the water, you're just observing the sea. Does it immediately occur to you that this is the case, or without bringing in a prior build up concept? Yeah, God puts the laws and things act by law. You didn't say this, but just to give an example. Or yeah, they act because God gave them existence. But is it that no, it speaks that it says Bismillah, and I hear it as Birkan was giving the example of this poor child. You look at it and you see that that child is in need, it just speaks out. So is it that clear? Like because in the, let's say in front of the mosque, when you go to mosque, there are some poor people sitting in front of the mosque. You know that this guy is poor. He doesn't even need to utter a word. The way that he stands and then opens the head and whatnot with his tongue of disposition, he's asking for money. And you know that nobody needs to speak. So when you see a seed germinating or a leaf in the summer, you hear that it is saying, I stand here in the name of the Creator, otherwise I wouldn't.
I think as a human being, you'd be inclined to try to find meaning and purpose in everything that's connected to you. So I would look at it and think, why is this here? What purpose is it serving me in my life? And then I would think this is something that gives life in a sense. This is something that helps, cultivate life, whether it's producing fruit or that vegetation serves some other purpose. I would read it in that way and say, okay, this has allowed me to live a certain way on this earth. And so that's how it's speaking to me. So I would be inclined to read it from the perspective of like what, like basically what is this gift and what purpose does it serve? Or what is this, and what is the sign on this earth? And what is this sign that my Creator has put in front of me? For what reason? And in that, maybe it tells me that it's ultimately reminding me about God. So that's how it's speaking of God.
I see that there is a comment from Suhail. Suhail says, Suhail, if you're available for microphone, you can talk for yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Just To add to what others said, what I understand from Bismillah is that, well, I guess the question about how does something operate, the mechanism. In reality, no one can actually say, no one, like we just describe things or say things and put names to it. But in reality, when it pertains to the act of creation, no one can actually say how things are coming into being, how things move from one moment to the next, or as the last person said, how things are being brought into being at every moment anew. That's what we really observe in reality. But then, by our sort of temporal relationship, our memory, do we associate things by cause and effect, and say this leads to that, leads to that, leads to that. I mean, really, you can't even say causes it, but A and B and C in this sequence happen, and then you get a tree from a seed. But what is actually happening is far beyond that. Our comprehension as human beings can't really know how the painter paints. We just witness the painting because we are a part of the painting, or how the writer writes because we aren't witnessing the act of writing. We are the book. We are the writing in and of itself. So Bismillah is that acknowledgement, really, is that every moment is manifesting the name of God, or some name, or all names really, but something in particular that's unique to them, a different manifestation of a particular name. For example, in a tree, you can think of just maybe one name like fashioner, and every moment's a different manifestation of that name at every level of the tree, from the particle level to the cell to then if you talk about the trunk or the stem or the leaf or the veins or roots or anything of that sort, and then to the environment around it. So every moment's a manifestation, and in a sense they all say Bismillah because in a way, in one sense, there's many aspects, at least to me, about Bismillah, and that one, it's acknowledgement of what's actually happening, is that nothing can happen except by God. And because they're all from God and of God, and therefore for God himself. And so there's an acknowledgement there. And then there's a sort of, by saying it, it's a recognition and also a sense of prayer, because I know, or let's say the tree knows that nothing, its very being can't happen save it happens in the name of God. Some name manifests, or all names manifest upon its being. The name of fashioner, or the name of all merciful, or all just, or all wise, or all knowing, or all powerful, or et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a sort of prayer saying that I can only be saved in the name of God. And so one, all things happen in the name of God because everything is a manifestation of his names. And then it's a prayer saying, I can only be, and I desire to be only in the name of God. And in some sense, also, it's a praise of those names, because in my recognition and acknowledgement and prayer, do I praise and say that those names that are manifesting, they are what is really happening. What is the real mechanism? Is that the names are what's manifesting through his act of creation. And so I'm recognizing, acknowledging, and praising him alone through those names, saying that all things happen because of him, on account of him. So that's what I took away from Bismillah.
Jazakallah khair. So then I will apply this metaphor to a seed. So in the metaphor, he said, in terms of need, so that person goes in the desert, goes to a tent and is being treated beyond his power. And then when bandits come, again, acting in the name, he is being not being touched. And he says this applies to the seeds and everything. So when it comes to a seed, what is happening? So look at the creation that we are in. For the seed to germinate, what is needed? Water. Water is needed. Bluetooth.
I think it should be okay now.
Do you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
So they lost you from the beginning.
They lost me from the beginning.
So they didn't hear anything you said.
Okay.
Not from the very beginning, but
Okay.
since you heard the sound.
I see. Okay, so
You were saying about the God, religion,
okay.
the prophet, Bismillah, this kind of stuff.
I see. Okay. Yeah, so for that seed to come into being, at least the environment that we see it, for that seed to germinate, it needs all these things, and they are being served. Like in that tent, that seed is being served with sun, with water, with gravity, with everything. That seed is being served. How? Like, is it that the sun is becoming subservient to the seed because seed has so much of a power? Or like water is being brought to the seed? What is it? Is it that seed has so much authority over the clouds and the water that it is being distributed with air transportation? So I think to see Bismillah in seed germinating, I need to see that these are the needs of that seed and it's being provided to the seed. But how come does this happen? If I take it as well, it just happens. It's part of the cycle. Like rain is happening, sun is coming, it's just happening. So seed is not really doing anything. If I read it as such, then there's no Bismillah. Like there's this already turning cycle of life and whatever, which happens by itself. Then yeah, there's no Bismillah in there. In this case, I'm sort of not thinking it at all. I'm just saying that things happen and this is what it is. That's all I say. But if I think about it seriously, like what makes water to come all the way from there to here and germinate this seed? What brings it here? Or to ask it in a different way, let's say, I don't know, you receive water. In city of Philadelphia, water comes to your door. And here is the water guy. So do you say that, well, just water comes, or do you say that somebody who knew that people would be living here and they will need water, so we better provide a pipeline for them, like filter the water from here, send it all the way to here, all the way up to my faucet. This is how water comes to me. Like I am in need of them. Who knows my need and who is pitiful to me brings it. Otherwise, it's not like I exert some power over them and I force the whole mechanism to serve me with water. Or this is one way to take it. The other way to take it is, well, it just happens and I happen to be here. No, purposefully, some people are working behind the scenes constantly to maintain the water quality, to just pump the water, filter the water, and everything. It is like a lot of choices are being taken since it's an ongoing action. Something is somebody is doing that, but the question is who does it? What makes it? So the way author is now suggesting us to read is just read the scene and what you observe there. The one who germinates the seed, either it is the one who brings this rain, who rises and sets the sun and everything, or else you will say the seed is so strong and it is taking all these under its control. What do you think? The eyes say, well, maybe not. This is what I'm reading from the eyes. It looks like there are alternative explanations. Please go ahead then. No? Yes, those eyes who say maybe not. I'm talking to you.
Oh. No, Mohammed mentioned another alternative.
Okay.
And it sounded cool, at least. Right? He said, the things are programmed in this way. There are some rules that they follow. There's no will.
I was going off the point. I just made it sound cool.
Oh, that doesn't matter. So I guess the mainstream alternative anyway. So what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Like, is there anything wrong with that actually? No? Okay, that's great.
There is, since there's an it's definitely wrong and the text is right, but we have to kind of pretend to entertain it. So how are we supposed to speak up when there's the pressure of that in the room?
No, to be honest, that was not my direction that I was going.
I don't know if that perspective is consistent with my own personal experience.
What do you mean with that?
What I mean is that, if it all happened before time, right? Just like you press a button and then you start the simulation and everything has its definitions and its programs and well, I see too much involvement in my own life. Like it's not something that happened in the past tense, right? Like these causes are not from ages ago. These are immediate, right? There are things that are happening in the present moment that I can say, oh, there's influence, right now, right? Instead of something that happened ages ago. So I don't know if that is consistent with this framework.
Okay, the more, let's say, plausible version is just, there are some natural laws which, governs the movements, which governs the attractions, everything we see. There are some natural laws. And if you have these laws in place, what else you need? Why you need to talk about the needs? So when, for instance, Yusuf talks, it talks about these strange concepts like needs, desires, the will, power. But if you have these natural laws in place, and if everything is following these natural laws, like when it comes to seed, for instance, or cell, so there are, the underlying physical and chemical laws, and these, the higher level biological happenings, they're just the outcome of these laws.
Mhm.
So wherever you look inside a cell or inside an apple, like as a whole, you will see that there are common laws. So what is the mystery then? Why you are trying to put things like desire, wish, need, power? You see, I'm not trying to.
I don't know if it's relevant. What's the point of existence in that framework, right?
Well, maybe there's no point.
There's no point. You guys what I'm saying?
So what is the, like, it's obvious that you don't like it,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
What is the escape from it? Like, there are things that we don't like, but sometimes they are the things that we have to accept. Maybe we should accept that as well. I mean, it is, to me at least, strange when you think about it. Like, there's the first word of this book, and it directly starts from need, start from the weakness, strength, and the, your desires. This is where it starts from. But he also says, I will speak in the language of ordinary men, whatever he means with that. So obviously, Zerrin is not an ordinary man, right? An ordinary woman, doesn't matter. Ordinary person. So how am I going to speak in her language? You are ordinary, not her.
I'm glad.
So anyway, like, and these are the arguments, right? When it comes to, whenever you talk about, I need this or we need this and I don't have power and so on and so forth. The argument is always about some natural laws, some patterns, the programming, the rules, however you want to call them.
So then maybe this is why the author brought in me, saying that my proud soul, you are the traveler, and this world is a desert. Your impotence and poverty have no limit, and your enemies and needs are endless. So first, realize this is the case for you. And then he says the same thing applies to the seeds and the sun and the leaves and everything as well. But I guess I can put myself in that situation now. Am I a needy being? Because, like, if we naturally put Ali on a corner, like if he is not taken care of, we know that he is this needy creature. And now that he started crying, for example, mother is going to fulfill his needs. Yes, I am a needy being. I am in need of water, food, and everything. I am in need of mercy, not only those material needs. I am so needy, and those needs need to be fulfilled from somewhere, something. It's not like, oh, the natural laws or like I fit into the laws of the nature. Like, I mean, this little baby needs to be taken care of actively by someone. And it's not only that, like, his mother makes or creates food out of nothing. At best, she goes and gets it from somewhere to feed him. So that need is being fulfilled by some resources. So somebody needs to provide that food. This applies to me. And I truly feel that the need is there. And let's say if I'm in need of food today, and we don't have any food here, let's assume, and just we open the door and find biryani in front of our door, how would we feel? Like, how did they know that we were in need of food? Who brought this food here? This would be our first reaction, because this was not our anticipation. We didn't call anybody. to bring us the food, yet somehow the food came to our door. So it's a little creepy. We would either say that's, I don't know, there has to be an explanation for that. Where did this food come from? So as I sense this within myself, then I think I can say, well, is the case any different for the seed, for the leaves, for the rootlets of the trees? They are as needy as I am, and their needs are being fulfilled. But what fulfills them? What fulfills this need?
So mashallah, in one of this week, when talking about the complexity that one might observe in the world or the universe, one of my students was talking about how, well, and this student was an engineering student, so they're coming with this background.
So doesn't know anything, right?
Well, it's far from my realm, but they had a very sort of sincere reaction to it. It was their first time looking at an argument that proceeded with something like, there's complexity or some kind of purpose that we observe in the world, hence there must be a purpose giver or source of that complexity, some sort of divine governance. And it was their first time coming across this argument, so they had a very sincere response to it, given their background, which was that, well, can't purposiveness or order come through random processes or random, I don't know, like engineering or I guess, like, I don't know how code works, but right, there's something like that. Basically, there's something like that observable in this field of let's say computer science or maybe programming of.
It's not observed. It's more hypothetical.
Okay, sure. And that is the kind of worldview that we are generally, I mean, myself as well, right? That we're raised in. But I guess here, listening to you, Brother Yusuf, the approach is not about necessarily observing the complexity in the world from this sort of external standpoint, but looking at myself, the needs that I have, and how there is a constant correspondence between my needs and what is created, what I observe. That there is this sort of constant relationship between my needs and where my hand reaches out to. And that this isn't a sort of one-time occurrence, but something that I can constantly observe. My lungs are in need of air, there is air, right? I mean, if we're talking about bodily needs, like there's a sort of this. So if we look from the standpoint of my human needs, and then what I observe in the world, then it's a different approach, I guess. And that might lead us to different lines of reasoning or thinking. That's what I wanted to highlight.
There is a comment by Hale, so if you don't mind, I will read it first and then you can continue. You wanted to say something, right?
Yeah.
Your body language. So Hale asks about these so-called natural laws. What makes them natural? In other words, essential. Where are these laws? I don't see those in the seed or the tree and everything in between, he says. And you can, continue, please.
Well, I wanted to say that. So you're coming from a point that we have a need and somehow this need is being fulfilled. So you're a human being and you have lungs and you breathe. You need like air to breathe. You're not a fish. You don't have gills. Otherwise, you would be in the water, right? So that's what. But that doesn't deny that there's a law. So, for example, Brother Yusuf brought up the seeds, that it needs water. It doesn't need sunlight, but it needs water to germinate. But the fact that if the seed is being grown somewhere else where there's no water, it will not grow, because simply this water is not flowing in the direction where, you know, it will reach the seed, is flowing somewhere else.
Can we say it does not grow? Not it will not grow, but it does not grow?
Yeah, it doesn't grow.
Yeah, there are different things.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't grow. So someone would say, so if there's someone that is always sustaining the seed and providing it with its needs, why wouldn't the water deviate from this, you know, direction of flow and go there and water this seed to grow? Because why isn't it a law? If you would be now on Mars, there would be no air and you can't breathe, you know, like, so
again, you don't breathe.
You don't breathe.
No, I think this is like the way we are programmed kind of through these education systems that speak and think. But if you are a true scientist, you should say that we don't breathe. This is what we observe. And that's all. To say that you cannot breathe or, you know, you will not breathe is going a few steps beyond and making some, at least pretending, like, I'm not talking about you, but at least pretending like you are making a philosophical argument while you are not actually. You're just showing that, for instance, if I drop this, it falls down. Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
But if I say that, you know, when I drop it, it will fall down, there is something beyond my knowledge. And there's nothing within my knowledge that, you know, necessitates that it's a true statement. All I know that it does fall, and that's all.
Yeah, but you're based this on observations, no?
Yeah,
that's what scientists
based
do.
on observation, you just make predictions, right?
Yeah.
You can say, you know, I hope it will fall, or I believe, I guess it will fall. That's what you can say.
Yeah. So I guess you won't survive. My point is that, so people would say there's a law that this seed, it will germinate only in the presence of water, you know, and like our lungs are, you could say, are made or designed, or the law is the way it is, that you can breathe only this, you can breathe only air, and you can only, you know, there also should be percentage of this much oxygen, this much whatever. So, I mean, I still, like, from your argument, whether you argument, I still don't understand why you can't say there's a law, you know, if we have needs that need to be fulfilled, because sometimes they are not being fulfilled. When they are not falling in the laws that we know, they are not being fulfilled, right?
There's a like Suhail's hand is there since, you know, Ayşenur started speaking, so it's his turn. Suhail, please go ahead.
Just briefly, you know, this idea of need, or the sense of need or feeling of need, you know, my question is, if there is a law, let's, for example, just state, for argument's sake, what makes this law inherently necessary to bow down to my need, or to acquiesce or fulfill my need? There's nothing there. Like, what makes water inherently necessary, as Yusuf was saying, to actually quench my thirst or to provide sustenance to the seed? There is nothing. In other words, like he says, is this Bismillah is the start of all things good. What good is there? You know, like it's meaningless. It's pointless. So what good is there if Allah, in essence, doesn't have anything to do or care about what I need, what the seed needs, what anything needs, just to be, simply put? There isn't. So what makes it good at all? There is no good. In fact, it's evil, I would say. I know that sounds harsh, but that's what it is. When people say laws, it's really in essence evil, because there's no like gray zone here. It's just black and white, because if I say the law is serving my need, then it's pointless, meaningless. Like, let alone the fact that there's nothing inherently in the law to say that it needs to do anything for me. So, and when something is meaningless or pointless, then what good is there in that thing?
No, I guess maybe the more familiar argument is, well, if there were no water, I wouldn't be living. So, like, because we say, well, I am in need of water, how does water come to here, right? And the argument is, well, if it didn't come, I wouldn't be living in the first place. Therefore, it's not really coming. I survived because it came before. It's not coming to serve my need, is being the justification. But tomorrow, like, there's nothing that says tomorrow it will rain. That's why I guess Birkan was especially picking up on this word, it will. What makes it that tomorrow rain will come? So what law is that? What requires, what necessitates that water will come from like clouds and whatnot today or tomorrow? Or yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one thing is that to that argument, I would just simply ask, what makes it even necessary if you have water that I have to be? What is there in water for me to necessitate that I even have to be, even if there is water or not water? The presumption is that there has to be water for me to be, but what makes it even necessary for water to make me be?
Yeah. So like the same argument follows, in which then now the thing is, even if water is here, when I drink water, will I survive? So we can't even extend it like that. So he was just pushing it further. But the idea is, what makes it that I say, well, rain will come tomorrow? We say it's a law. Or I say, if I drink water, like because of this osmosis and whatever, I'm going to keep surviving because this is, again, another law. I gave it the name. So in this case, what I am saying is just the mechanism makes me survive. Like I have to, if you put all these together, I will live no matter what. This is being our understanding. So I guess the questioning here is multiple questions there. First of all, what is this law that we imagine? Like if we say that there's this law of milky ginger tea during our discussions, like, is it a milky ginger tea law, or is it that like next week there will come milky ginger tea? So is it a law that, like a thing repeating multiple times, does it say that it has to happen like this? There's this must, or is it that somebody is acting like that? So I guess this is one distinction. But so one of the things that I'm observing, at least since the author in here is really speaking on the language of common people, he's saying that you're needy, you're in need of water. And today I am needy, and tomorrow water comes. So shall I say, well, it comes because, well, if it didn't come last year, I would be dying this year. And if it doesn't come tomorrow, I will die over the summer. So shall I take it as this way of seeing? Or I open the door, I see biryani over in front of the door. And let's say this had been the case for the past, 10 years. I open the door, there's biryani. I open the door, there's biryani. And I am in need of biryani. Like I am in need of food, and it's being put in front of my door. And I just say, well, if there was no food, I wouldn't be living for the past 10 years. And this being my justification. Rather than saying, well, I am in need of food, and food is put in front of my door. and it's beyond my reach to put this food over there. Who put this food over there? So which one is a meaningful way of seeking for an answer? Is the difference clear? I'll just repeat because I think I need that repetition. Well, this biryani was in front of my door for the past 10 years. This is why I am surviving for the 10 years. So there's nothing abnormal about this. It is just the law of biryani, just biryani and happens to be here. The other alternative is I am in need of biryani also today, and today the biryani is put in front of my door. And I didn't put it, and it's not within my reach to create or put this over there. What puts this biryani over here? And in our case, I think this intricateness of the creation also points out clearly. I mean, we can go to the details and see it there, but I think even at the super surface, water being served to me tomorrow from the clouds is an awkward thing, as awkward as tonight we open the door and they're seeing a biryani, seeing like water coming from the clouds is as awkward. I mean, since I have been seeing it for the past 35 years, I just say that, well, this is the cycle, this is the law, but like, why? How come it comes from there? How come that because I mean, I am in need of it today and it's being sent tomorrow. How does this come from? This is why I think Suhail's question was important in this sense. Where is this law? Other than my imagination, where is this law? Like, I keep seeing it, but seeing biryani in front of my door for 25 years doesn't mean anything really, other than saying that somebody put it there consistently for 25 years. Yes, or somebody or something. But does it mean that he will put it tomorrow too? Or like what? This is why I think this idea of seeing it as a law requires it is veiling the fact that I am being provided and there's no guarantee that next moment I'm going to be provided. Because this idea is not making me see that my needs are being fulfilled, but it rather simply becomes, I do survive because it is there. Like, it's not being sent. It is there, and I survive because it is there. How come it is there? I don't care, because if it was not there, I wouldn't be. I am because it is there. Therefore, in this case, the idea is this: things are acting on their own name. It rains, like things fall, seed germinates. They act on their own behalf, on their own name, in this way of an understanding.
I think, and sorry, you can correct me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like another question that Sarah was asking was, could these laws not have been like purposefully put in place, and so we experience them? Like, why do we have to deny the existence of the laws themselves? Right? Was that like part of the question that you had asked?
Yeah, kind of, because as I said, like we mentioned the like we can breathe on Earth, yeah, but there's a law put by someone that you can breathe this type of air, or you need air and you need this type of air, and that's why when you're like on another planet, you won't be able to breathe. So that was like part of like people would argue that that this shows you that there's some kind of, you know, like or at least if someone is putting these laws, they are like, or someone is providing you with this need, he's not providing it every time. He's only providing it like at a certain time and a certain conditions. Yeah, something like that. But I didn't want to discuss that because I know that we discussed this before, that if something does, like the idea of having one hand or two hands, and why do you think you you deserve a hand anyways? So something like that. But yeah, I think
You deserve to breathe.
Hmm?
You deserve to breathe.
yeah.
Ne? Ik vardı konuşuyorsun. Yeah, I know I have everything in front of me now. I kind of control microphones and so on, but you are the moderator. So when it comes to laws, I guess the word, at least the way we use it, the word law, has this connotation. Everything is built in already. So, once you say law, it sounds self-explanatory. Like you don't breathe on Mars because there's law. So when I say that, again, it sounds like I already explained something. So she asks for, the Ayşenur, she believed Elon Musk, he sent her to the Mars, and now she realized that she cannot even breathe on Mars. And she asks, why I cannot breathe on Mars. She's asking, her husband, because he also believed Elon Musk, they were, the pioneers.
SpaceX.
Yeah, SpaceX, they did the first part of the first colonization. They went there. And he says, Abdul Rahman says, because, there's this law about, your body, oxygen, how we produce, the energy and so on and so forth. The word law, because we also use the same word for, enforcement, law enforcement, it sounds like, this law forces it to be that way. Otherwise, you wouldn't even call it as law, right? So I guess the problem with that, so if I put something on the paper, for instance, like let's talk about the laws in our society. Government or city decides something.
Don't pass on red light.
Yes, they say,
Which you abide, which I don't abide.
they say, you cannot or you shall not, pass red on the red light or in when okay, you shall not pass at the red light. So, and you are going on with your car, you haven't heard about this law before, you see a red light, it doesn't mean anything to you, you just pass. So this law didn't prevent you from passing at the red light. So what kind of, enforcement it has, you say? And then the answer, but you didn't know that there was law. Then the question is how this oxygen knows that there's such a law, right? Obviously, we cannot start from this understanding of law. It must be something else. And even if you knew it, you see the red light and the law comes to your mind, you shall not pass, right? But you say, I will, today is my birthday and I can do everything. And you just pass. So what prevents you that you need this fear or a law enforcement officer holding you and say that, no, you cannot. So you need obviously some certain, like a kind of power over the thing to enforce this law. And when it comes to these so-called natural laws, we don't have any of these. And that's the reason we call them actually natural, because it's like a shortcut. It's like escape route. If somebody asks, you're talking about this law, but who makes, where is the enforcement there? And you say, but it's natural. But how they know that there's such a law? And you say, but it's natural. It's like the escape road. You call it natural, it means it will work and they will follow. Otherwise, there's no otherwise because it's natural, you say. So obviously there are, there are these, missing parts, obviously. But even if we don't start from there, if we start from, we look from the, let's say, the cognitive processes of the sciences that produces this law, how they, how we come up with such laws. What we do, we observe things, and we realize that, the things happen in a certain way. That's all we see, all we know. So, for instance, when Yusuf gives this example of the tea being served in Friday halakas, you don't call it as law. Right? But let's say every week it's being served, still you don't call it as law. And this analogy even makes you, giggle, like what a silly example you say, right? It's obvious that there is no such law. Like, what would happen if I tell you, but for every Friday halakas across the country, whenever there's a Friday halakah, there's always tea being served. You wouldn't still call it as a law, right? And you will even say that, but you're giving a wrong example. Because seeing the silliness in this example, come on, it's atik being like serving the tea. Why you are just denying his contribution? Right? It's so silly to say that there's a law, that's the reason tea is being served. Brother Atik chose it. It is so obvious. But when you look at the natural law, we realize when we look at them, not articulate them, but when we look at them, the way we come up with these laws, you realize the same silliness is there too as well. So what happens, you see everything, happen in a certain way, all these things happen in a certain way, and you say, what if we assume there is such a law? Would it help us, make some predictions and so on, or, put everything on the same page together? And you say, yes, okay, then you say, let's call them as law. This is the process it's being produced. Otherwise, you don't, as Suhail said, when we look at an apple, nowhere in the apple written the law of gravity. So Newton, if we follow this traditional story, didn't look at the apple and saw somewhere that, oh, I see this law, hence there's a law of gravity. Instead, he said, okay, the apple is falling, computer is falling, this thing is falling. So I will call this pattern that I observe as a law, you say. And it works. It fulfills certain purposes. But when you say, I couldn't do that. When you go beyond that, and when I ask you why this thing falls, if your answer is because there is a law, then you are making a circular argument. So it cannot explain how it falls. It is the outcome of this observation already. You said, it falls, this is how I see, and I'm calling this pattern as a law. That's great. Again, it fulfills certain needs. But when it comes to explaining something, if I ask you how it falls, and your answer is because there's a law, then it becomes a silly argument. It's like, you observing me cooking something, and you realize there's an order, there's a pattern. in the way I cook. I always put, the first eggs, what is it, whipping? Whisking them, then pouring the flour and so on and so forth. You observe this rule, and you call it as a recipe, which makes sense, right? And then somebody comes and asks, wow, such a delicious, the cake. How it happened to be here? And you say, because there's a recipe. It doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't fulfill this need. I mean, it fulfills other needs. Like, for instance, now you can share my practice with Zerrin, and Zerrin can do the same thing. You can share this recipe or look at the recipe and design something else based on that. You can do that as well. But when you say the cake is in this form because there's a recipe, it doesn't work. It is there in this form because I did it that way. Just because I chose to follow it, to follow the recipe, it doesn't give any extraordinary power to the recipe. Recipe is not even a thing. It doesn't even exist. It's just an idea that my imagination. Just because I put it on the paper, write it, and give it to you, it doesn't make it any more real than that. The same thing when it comes to a natural law. It only exists as my understanding of the reality. This is the natural law. This is how I perceive things. How I perceive things, happen in a certain way. But just because I name it and put it on some textbooks, and just because certain people articulate them, it doesn't make them anything like any more real than a recipe. Yes, when I observe, when I drop this, it follows a certain path because its fall is being put in the existence. I don't want to call it creation because it has a connotation as well. But from a naive perspective, its existence being put in that way, following a recipe. Why following a recipe? It's another question, but the recipe does not explain it. Recipe only tells, actually, the fact that there's a recipe or there is such a order, law, it only says more. It says whatever giving rise to this existence must be, must have a certain knowledge. Because, a dog, for instance, cannot follow a recipe. Only a human being can follow a recipe. Why? Because I say human being has this capacity to read, understand the recipe. So whatever is giving rise to existence of this thing must have the certain thing that I would call as knowledge, as will, as a conscious. Otherwise, I wouldn't, even talk about any order. So we use these laws to, let's say, get rid of the so-called creator, but actually the existence of laws says more than, more like it says a lot of things about the creator that we cannot cover. The fact that there's a recipe it doesn't only says there must be a cook, it also says there must be a conscious cook. Just because there's a recipe, there must be a clever cook or, the wise cook. It says even more than there must be a cook. You were?
No, I was just going to say what you said, which is that they play a nominal role.
Yeah, exactly.
An explanatory one.
Yeah.
It's
That's the main. I mean, if we want to, go more, let's say, formal, this is the main, like, let's say, the mainstream, the way of explaining laws, nominals. But they have just names in, layman's term. We see some things, we name them, but they cannot explain anything. Otherwise, it has to be circular. So we cannot say that, the seed germinates when there's a water because there's a law. No. It's the other way around. We see that seed germinates when there's a water, hence there's a law. Not the other way around. Therefore, you cannot explain it through law. It actually begs more explanation now. Before, it was only seed. Now, I had to explain how a seed can exist, how water can exist, how germination can exist. That was before, that's the only thing I had to explain. But because when they come together, they also points to a law, now I have to explain also how there's a law, there's a pattern, and they follow this pattern. Now I have to explain something more. So, talking about laws actually complicates things. Before I could, say that, oh yeah, things exist and live with it. But if you bring the law in the picture, now you have to talk about the conscious creator. Don't do that. Like as a, let's say atheist. No, don't talk about the law, because if you talk, now I have to talk about the conscious creator. It complicates things, not, makes things easier. And Suhail says, where does need arise from the law if the law is without a conscious? Where does need, Yusuf's need, arise from the law, I guess? Oh, okay, we are kind of out of time, but we, of course, have to listen, Atik.
Order guy, go ahead.
So now, I think it's been a fruitful discussion. That might be all for today. Stay tuned for next week, inshallah.
I had actually one point from the reading that we didn't cover. It was just it's not kind of related to the thread that we've been on, but it was related to the metaphor about the individual traveling the desert. So the traveler who was given this authority by using the name of a figure that's respected. I just thought it was kind of beautiful to think about the fact that this person uses this name, that they put themselves under they've kind of made themselves a subject of this authority. It actually gives them value and a respect within it, within themselves. Like, I shouldn't say within themselves, but it gives them respect in front of others. It makes me think when we talk about, we were talking about a plant, you could observe a plant as it's just some matter. It's just a collection of matter. But if you actually see that its existence is in the name of Allah, then that also increases the value of it. You treat it differently. You give it that kind of respect. If you saw a bug on the ground and you saw that this is in itself speaking, the name of Allah, then you're less likely to crush it. It gives it a certain elevated value. So I thought that aspect was interesting. The way that just when you put these things in the name of Allah, they are immediately given a purpose, a value that they wouldn't otherwise have. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining.
For real this time, yeah.
I suggest we don't finish the first word. We continue next week as well, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا